On this week's episode on Cup of Joe, we have exciting details on the Iowa Power Farming Show and the Iowa Land Investment Expo. Stay tuned.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman from Mershman Seeds. Welcome to Cup of Joe, episode number 14. Been a big week this past week, and we got a lot of information to share with you. And today we have our standard folks here as far as our panel. We have Tommy Johns and Turk Rigginator and Ben Pieper. So let's start off with Ben. He's got some new information today to share with us.
This week was a big week for us. Everybody in Iowa had we went to the third largest indoor agricultural show, which is the Iowa Farm Power Show up in Des Moines. So we talked to a lot of farmers over the week. We had good crowds over the week. The main thing that our salesmen got the opportunity to do is talk with a lot of farmers about how confused they are with the new traits that are in the marketplace, whether or not they're approved. So I kind of just wanted to touch over the subject of what our new traits are, how easy they are to use, and what is approved and what isn't. So we're going to start off with the LL-GT27 for all of our viewerships here.
Liberty Link
GT27s. So the Liberty Link, the LL stands for Liberty Link, the GT stands for glyphosate tolerant, which is commonly known as Roundup, and the 27 is the class of herbicide that is resistant as a pre, and that is called Elite 27. So
what's the active on Elite 27?
The active is called isoxafludol, which was previously known on the marketplace as Balance or Balance Flex, which is a corn herbicide. So we have everything, all the approvals for export on that product, but we are waiting for the Elite 27 portion, which is the pre-applied herbicide that it will bleach weeds, and it has a reach back effect. So we do not have the approval from the EPA on that.
We'll know when that approval's coming when we get our comment period, and so far there's been no comment period scheduled yet for that particular Elite 27 herbicide. That'll be the key to know that it won't be long, the registration will be complete. Right,
and because we don't have that comment period yet, more than likely we will not have that herbicide to use this spring. So that product, the LL GT27, is going to be a Roundup Liberty, are the two herbicides that it is going to be tolerant to that we can use for this coming 2019 growing season.
So the first year they'll just have to use their normal pre-emerge. They won't be able to use the Elite 27.
That is absolutely correct. Yep. The second trait that we have that is going to, I believe, is once we have full approval on, is going to take over the market, has all U.S. approvals. You can use the herbicides that are associated with it. We just are waiting for Philippine approval. We've talked about this on the show the past couple weeks, but I just wanted to hammer home because there's so much confusion on this, is that the Enlist E3 soybeans are Liberty Link, glyphosate tolerant or Roundup, and 2,4-D choline tolerant. And the 2,4-D choline is a new salt that Dow has engineered that has reduced volatility by a lot. And we've seen this product used, we've seen it tested, we've seen it in plots, we've seen it in real field scenarios, and it works very well in regards to killing broadleaves and not volatilizing. So
it's got a different smell too, even than the old 2,4-D.
Yep. That's one of the key characteristics that we talk about when we're using the Enlist program, is that it has reduced smell. And
so that particular choline salt, that's the only salt that you can apply on Enlist E3 soybeans, the 2,4-D piece. That's the only product that's labeled to go post on these soybeans.
Absolutely, post and pre, without having your restriction for plant back. So the amines and esters, you still have to follow the label. If you spray those products, I believe it's like a 2-week plant back for those products. But if you use the Enlist 1, which is Enlist by itself, or the Enlist Duo, which is the 2,4-D and glyphosate combination, those are the two products that you can, if you wanted to follow the planter with or try to use it as a burn down ahead of time, you don't have to wait on the 2-week interval.
What about mixing this new 2,4-D Enlist 1 product? I mean, is there any restrictions on how, or any process that you should follow when you mix products together?
Yeah, there is. They want to make sure that there's enough recirculation time in the tank when you add the Enlist 1 product before you dump the glyphosate or the glufosinate in it. And it has a specific glyphosate. I'm going to have to go back and look this one up, but it's got a specific glyphosate characteristic. It depends on what salt is in it. So like a Roundup Power Max is a specific salt that will cause gumming up of the two products if you dump the Enlist 1 and the Roundup in the tank at the same time. So you got to be really careful when you add those products so that we don't have, so the spray mixture doesn't clog filters and tips and such.
So yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, essentially, so you just don't fill it up at the same time. It's just one and then the other.
Yep.
Or be safe and use Enlist Dual, which already has the glyphosate and the new 2,4-D salt already premixed.
Correct. And it's potassium. It's a potassium salt-based Roundup. So any of the potassium salt-based glyphosates is what we have to worry about. So but we are waiting for Philippine approval on that product yet. So when there's a lot of confusion out there because these companies that are licensees are out actively selling it, we are taking the reserved approach, or there's some misinformation out there because we are very reserved. The only thing that we are looking for is possibly production acres, and these production acres have to be stewarded at this time. So we just really wanted to make sure when we were going out and talking about what is what in the marketplace and how to play by the rules. So
yeah, actually I don't think any company is allowed to sell it until we get the Philippine approval. The only thing that can be sold is seed production under stewardship, under contract, and under control of the seed company, because that's a pledge that the whole industry has made, not to release products into the environment, into U.S. agricultural land until we have all approvals. And it's just so we don't get crossways with our important export markets. And the Philippines are important to us because they are the #1 importer of soybean meal.
right.
So that's the key. So we want to protect that market for our farmers. And of course, if some of it would get into the export channel, it could jeopardize that.
Yep, you're absolutely correct.
So despite what you see, some overzealous salespeople might be talking about it, but I understand some companies are taking reservations, and that's fine, but they're not going to get a bag of beans until we get the Philippine approval, and we really don't know when that's going to happen. We assume it's going to be, and Turk gave an update on that a week ago. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Turk.
Well, hopefully we'll see that here before planning time, but there's no guarantees on that. I mean, it's, you know how foreign governments work, and when they're on their own pace, and so when they feel like it's time, they're going to do it. I don't know if trade's having anything to do with this or what, but I just feel that it's probably just bureaucracy in the Philippines that's holding it back. It's our understanding that everything is approved and ready to go. There just has not been any official announcement that they are accepting those soybeans for import yet.
Well, the key thing is that the industry's gearing up for 2020 for this trait. There's going to be a lot of it out there and stewarded, so it's going to give farmers a good chance to look at this product. And we've been working with it for years, and we're pretty excited about it. And of course, LiberLink GT27s, when we get the Elite 27 pre-emerge done, it's going to be also a sparkling product for controlling weeds. So farmers are going to have a lot of choices with Mershman seeds in 2020.
So Ben, you were saying they had greatly reduced volatility. How susceptible are other beans to Enlist herbicide?
The number, I can't pull the number out of thin air, but I know that they are so less susceptible to 2,4-D than they are to dicamba that other soybeans, non-traded soybeans, are not considered a susceptible crop.
Yeah.
So you can spray right up to the row, and you don't have any issues.
There will be a buffer associated with.
Yeah, it's 30-foot.
Downwind buffer.
Downwind buffer.
Downwind buffer.
That is to sensitive areas, not susceptible crops.
Okay.
So you can spray right up to the row with the Enlist soybeans.
So that makes it a much more attractive product than the Extend dicamba system.
Sure. That is absolutely correct. And the other thing that I wanted to announce before we get on to anything else is Stein has a new program in order for their Stein corn, which we are dealers through. They have a program that is, they're standing behind the farmer to help them with rootworm pressure for their below ground trait, Duracade. We don't have EU approval for that at this time, but they have a program set in place that is going to help pay for transportation to a Duracade approved elevator if we do not have EU approval by that time. So it's a very exciting announcement. It's going to help move that Duracade product to people that need it for their corn rootworm protection.
Oh, that's a great deal. So in other words, if you're planning and need the protection of a Duracade Syngenta trait for underground rootworm control, Stein will pay the extra freight to move that corn to a Duracade approved receiving elevator.
That is absolutely correct.
Okay.
And I know Harry Stein, he probably doesn't want to do that if he doesn't have to, so he's pretty confident that they're going to get this approval before harvest.
Absolutely, but it's one more way that these independent companies are standing behind their customers, getting them what they need.
Yep.
So I'm very happy about this.
That's great.
This is awesome.
That's a great tool.
Yep.
So there's no reason not to plant Duracade Stein corn this year if you're worried about the extra cost to move it to a channeled elevator.
Yep.
Yep, I think you just got to identify what the elevator is taking it and put that on. You still have to have that channeling form right now.
Right.
Well, thanks, Ben. That's a lot of good information. Tommy, you've been up in Des Moines all week again at the Power Show, and what's going on with farmers up there?
I'm with Ben a little bit. There was a lot of confusion, plus a lot of excitement with these new traits. A lot of questions on the Liberty Link GT27s. A lot of questions on the Enlist E3 soybeans. There's also been some cases where a lot of seed production has been canceled, Joe, which we kind of talked about on last episode of bait and switch season, as far as substituting orders. And we had some pretty good success with some ordering some soybeans last week at the Power Show. A lot of guys still looking for the Liberty Link GT27, and we still got a very good supply, especially in our early maturities as far as that goes. And there's a couple things. I was at the Land Expo last Friday, and I met a farmer by the name of Ben Brown. He was an 11-year-old farmer. His dad is a lawyer in Des Moines, and I met him through Bill Brewer. And we're going to be kind of working with Ben, and I think you might see him on an episode of Cup of Joe someday.
You see, that would be one of the youngest farmers we got buying Mershman soybeans.
He's been involved in it since he was 9. I believe he's been this past year was the first year that he planted his own soybeans and corn. Dad's still obviously, with safety reasons involved in things, but he just wants to learn as much as possible, and it kind of brightened up my day to see someone that young so excited to get into farming. So. And then one other thing, Joe, I missed a special birthday announcement yesterday, and that was Bill Brewer, a very good, started out as a business partner, but has turned into a very good friendship. So
he's our dealer located just outside Indianola.
Yep. So Bill, happy belated birthday, my friend. That's all I got.
Well, good, Tommy.
So, yep.
Well, Turk and I also attended the Land Investment Expo, and this is a very prestigious event that was held at the
Iowa Event Center.
Iowa Event Center. Well, I know it was Veterans Auditorium, but now it's much bigger than that. But the Land Investment Expo is put on by a real estate company called People's Company, and they're one of the premier real estate companies for agriculture land in Iowa. Steve Brewer, actually Bill's son.
Yep.
And the unique thing about this expo is they bring in the top speakers in various categories, and Turk and I took good notes, and we thought we'd share some of the highlights with it. It's a extremely prestigious event. People from all over the United States come, and I think there was almost 900 people there that registered for this event. So it's a big one. But some of the economists they had there, and folks. And one of the ones I want to make a few comments about is Dennis Gartman. He's a publisher of the Gartman Letter. He said, we worry too much about our trade and our spending deficits, and he went back through the history of we've been doing this a long time, and it really has never affected the economy. And he said the reason why is because the fact that on our balance sheet, we don't account for any of the assets that this country owns. In other words, Yellowstone National Park, he said, what's it worth if that would go up for sale? We don't even it's not even on the U.S.'s balance sheet. So basically, they look at the debt and they look at the deficit spending and different things, and they say, oh, this is terrible, but the reality of it is our country has a tremendous amount of wealth. But one of the things that he really focused on was our military might and what that does for our country. He said, how many aircraft carriers does the U.S. have? He said, we have 11, soon to be 12 by next year.
Wow.
The next closest country is Russia, and they have 2. And China has 1, soon to have 2 in the next year, and Great Britain has 1. And why is that important? Well, because these aircraft carrier groups, when they come into a region, they basically can control a region. Because of our military might, the U.S. has the currency of the U.S. dollar is the reserve currency for the world. In other words, if you have money, you will put it into the U.S. Economy or somewhere in the U.S. because of the fact that it's the safest place because of our strong military. That occurred after World War II. After we invented the atomic bomb, we became the reserve currency of the world. And this week, I actually saw that in action in Venezuela. What's the first thing the U.S. did to cripple the dictatorship down there? We froze the assets of Venezuela because they were in our banks. And, they have a lot of oil in Venezuela. And so consequently, by freezing their assets, that's really crippling to the current administration. So it is true that our military might has some advantages from the standpoint of our currency. Another interesting thing that he brought up was that, what are the worst things that could hurt our economy? And they are tariffs and raising taxes. And the other thing is politicians. The biggest fear we have is our politicians screwing up our prosperity. He said, he invests his own dollars, that he is starting slowly, and he said slowly about 10 times, slowly moving his money out of the stock market and putting it into commodities. He thinks that $9 soybeans, $3 corn, $5 wheat are extremely undervalued. So that means that he's bullish on commodities. So if you're a farmer, and as we think about our situation where we're at today, it's pretty easy to get pessimistic, but he's optimistic. He's very bullish on commodities. So I don't think it's going to turn tomorrow, but long term that looks very, very encouraging for agriculture. The other thing he pointed out was that the U.S. 10 years ago was a very, very small producer of oil. But we are very close within the next year or two to becoming the #1 producer of oil in the world. And that's changed in the last 10 years. And why is that important? Well, first of all, we have seismic equipment now that gives a 95% probability rate that if we say there's oil down there, it is. We no longer look for oil in big pools. They found out that oil is really more lateral. It's almost like tree roots. It grows it's in veins. So because of better seismic equipment and because of the fact that we have sideways drilling, we can go down and drill sideways, and fracking, we've got a lot of oil. And this oil is very, very important to our economy. We also have a lot of natural gas. In the next few years, coal will be completely gone because natural gas is so cheap and plentiful. And because we have so much oil and so much natural gas, cheap natural gas, it allows us to make a lot of petrochemicals and a lot of other things that are important by having these resources. But 10 years ago, we never dreamt that we'd be in this position. So that's a really positive thing for the U.S. The other speaker that talked about a lot of things going on from the geopolitical standpoint was Peter Zeihan. I believe I pronounced his name. It's Zeihan. He talked about the various countries and their populations, and excuse me, how India is a very young country, so it's a country that has a lot of labor resources. Excuse me. And South Korea is a medium to older workers, and Japan just literally has no workforce. So they're doing a lot of robotics. And if you think about Japan's strategy, they build the factories where they sell the products. Like Toyota, for example, they've got factories all over the United States. Well, they don't have the workers in Japan, So they move to factories where there are workers and where they sell the product. And he talked about how the U.S. is in a pretty good position right now with our age groups. You know, we're not like some countries that are having a lot of folks older age. You don't have the younger folks, and we're kind of balanced. So consequently, we're in a position for the future. That's very positive. He believes that China's in trouble economically because of credit, and he doesn't really see them as a threat in the future. In other words, he said that he thinks that they're going to have a tougher time as we go on. So if you look at the United States, and if you're in agriculture, you're going to feel real good about what I'm going to say next. If you look at the map of the United States, you can see that all the agricultural land, some of the richest agricultural land in the world, and a large quantity of it exists east of the Rocky Mountains. And if you look at it, we also have the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico to the south. So that means we've got an easy way to ship the product, the agriculture products, and plus we have all these rivers in the middle. It's cost 1/12 the cost to ship anything by river as opposed to rail and truck. So the U.S., if you think about it, we have huge supplies of oil, we have huge supplies of food, and we have a balanced workforce. We have a strong military. So in all reality, as Trump's doing these trade deals, he's negotiating from a strength, not a weakness. And the first country that he negotiated a trade deal was South Korea, if you remember. And South Korea basically said, whatever you want. We'll give you whatever you want, because if you pull out of South Korea, that means North Korea or China is going to take us over, and we don't want that. So he's slowly been going down to various countries and negotiating with them and getting the proper deals that we need for trade. So that's a positive thing. And I don't think the U.S. was ever in this position before. So the other thing, if we look at all the other agricultural land out there, I know a lot of folks are concerned about Brazil, but he pointed out that Brazil's agricultural land sits in the middle of the country, and they have mountains around the outside. So that means they have a very thin path to get to market. In fact, they really only have one road to ship their grain products out to port, because they don't have a series of rivers. You know, the rivers run downhill, and well, if you got low land in the middle and you got mountains on the outside, that means rivers don't run uphill. So consequently, they really have a really high cost of transportation. So again, the U.S. is in a much better position on that. And one thing farmers are going to find very interesting is that U.S. agriculture land is considered the gold standard in the world as far as possessions. Agriculture land is more important than anything else that you could possibly own. And because of that, it's just going to be a very, very valuable commodity, agricultural land. And of course, we were at a land investment expo. You would expect them to give you a good positive spin on land, but I agree with them. They said if they would allow foreign investment of agricultural land, the land prices would be substantially higher because of that. I'd like to comment just a few more things that kind of struck my interest, and I'm going to turn it over to Turk because he's got some good statistics from Farm Credit that he attended in one of the breakout sessions. And Turk, if I'm missing anything, please jump in here. Anyhow, McClure Engineering talked about rural is better than urban, and they're a company that basically helps, among other things, but one of the things is they help small towns grow. You know, small towns are looking for population desperately, but their studies indicate that a lot of the medium-sized cities, and they pointed out Des Moines, over the next 30 years are going to grow very, very rapidly, but then at some point then we're going to see a mass exodus from the city back to the small towns. And they're just talking about what small towns can do to get folks to move into their area and to get younger folks. And you know, a lot of it had to do with housing, affordable housing, and housing is lower cost in small towns than it is in the big city. But in general, they talked about 3D printing. They've printed the first 3D house and the first 3D commercial building, this is brand new technology, 3D printing of buildings, and they talked about how fast it's going to be and how low cost it's going to be. And this could be something that small towns will take advantage of. But anyhow, they're saying that things are changing so rapidly. For example, there's one company out there that puts these shipping containers in these small towns, and they have an internet network, and young kids as young as third grade can come into these shipping containers, and they will teach them computer coding. In other words, how to write the language for the robots and the things that are coming in the future. And they'll tell that young person, if you spend so much time a week learning computer coding, starting at third grade, by the time you get out of high school, you will be talented enough that they'll offer you a $50,000 a year job. I can't imagine graduating from high school, having no college debt, and starting out at $50,000 a year in a small town where you can stay home and you code over the computer. But they're just talking about all the opportunities and all the things that's going to happen, and rural is where it's at, and the interest in coming back to small towns that work now to get ready for it. A couple other speakers that were there. Martha Stewart was there, and also Farmer D Consulting, inside I was chuckling, Turk, and you know what I was laughing about is it's all the stuff that our grandparents taught us that Martha Stewart is now doing in her magazines and in her books and everything. It's basically how to grow vegetables, how to can vegetables, how to do things that if you grew up on anywhere around the rural areas, your grandparents taught you that, your parents taught you that, and now she's developed a $1 billion corporation to teach city folks stuff that country folks probably already know. But it is interesting to see that. And Farmer D Consulting was talking about this utopia where small farms would be built next to cities, and developments would be around this small farm, and there'd be vegetables and naturally growing crops in there, and folks in the city around this would pay the farmer to grow this stuff, and they'd go out there and pick these vegetables. Again, all the stuff that we've learned over the years from our grandparents and our parents. But the bottom line is that this is going on, that folks think that organic and natural is better, and that was totally dispelled by James Wong, the botanist that talked after that, where he studied foods from the 20s and 30s versus now, and it was just amazing to me that the nutritional value, there's no difference. And what was really interesting to me was that I could go to my garden and pick out some fresh leafy vegetables and eat them, or I could go to the store and buy those same leafy vegetables, and the ones in the store would actually be higher in nutritional value than ones I picked and put on my plate within like 5 minutes. And you might say, well, how's that possible? It's because of ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet light is what the plant grows on, and consequently, when they put them in the store, they put ultraviolet lights over top of the vegetables, which makes them continue to grow, so they actually have a little longer growing period, therefore slightly higher nutrient value. So it's just the bottom line is there's no difference. In other words, if you like organic and natural, that's fine, but don't preach to me that your stuff is better than commercially grown or agricultural raised products. So I found that extremely interesting. Sure. The last thing actually two more things I'd like to talk about, and maybe I'll let Turk talk about the new crop that could be coming into the Midwest. There's a couple of new startup companies that were there, and one of them's called Earth Sense Robotics, and they're out of Champaign, Illinois, and they are inventing what I would call the equivalent to a Roomba vacuum sweeper, except it's a device that you turn loose in your field that can go down a row. It's not much bigger than a bathroom scale. It has all kinds of sensors on it, and it can actually scout your crop. Ben, it can do insect scouting, it can do disease scouting. I mean, you're going to deploy a fleet of these and just interpret the data someday, it looks like. But it can also eradicate weeds, too. In other words, it can find little weeds and eradicate them. So it's a brand new company. It's called Earth Sense, and in Champaign, Illinois, startup company. They're just starting to get things going. Another company called Trace Genomics and this was a guy named Brett Norman, and they are looking at the soil and what's in the soil from a molecular level. And why is that important? They're trying to determine what organisms are in the soil. They're looking at the fertilizer, they're looking at diseases. I know the Iowa Soybean Association is working with them to look to be a predictive method for sudden death syndrome and white mold. But they're also looking at what's available, and they're looking at it molecular level rather than just a nutrient level. So they're brand new, and that could be real interesting as far as opening up another opportunity to be more precision farming type thing by looking at the soil at a molecular level. Now, Turk, you grew up in the 60s, just like me. The new crop that they're talking about, the Farm Bill just approved it, is hemp. Now, it's not the hemp that you would smoke to get high on. Tell us about what we learned today.
Well, it's hemp for production of rope and other things. I mean, there's lots of uses for hemp other than smoking and making rope. Well, I was just amazed. I learned a lot in that breakout. But in Iowa, it is still considered a controlled substance, and so regulations have to be changed in all states in order to do this. But the farm program did approve hemp as a crop in the new Farm Bill, and so it's coming probably in all states eventually. But stay tuned. Obviously it's going to be a crop that I think has good opportunity for farmers to put into the rotation and make a profit from.
Yeah, and the hemp they can use the fiber, like you say. The other thing is the oil from the seeds.
Yeah. Yep.
And then where they would crush the seeds and create this oil, and the oil has a lot of health benefits, for joints and different things. I'm not an expert on what it can all do from the oil standpoint, but the bottom line is I think they had a panel there, and the one farmer that was talking about it that was actually raising it and for the seeds for the oil, he was saying realistically the $8,000 per acre profits that some people are talking. Well, he's never seen it, but he said, I can tell you I'm making $200 an acre with this particular product. He did say that it needs nitrogen, phosphate, and potash, but no insecticides and no herbicides. And it's very good for the soil, but you need to plant it on good soil. It's not a crop that you can plant on tough soils. And he just cautioned over and over again that there's going to be a lot of fly-by-nights, and they'll be selling you seed maybe at a lot of money, but no market for it. So until the market's developed and the laws change, like you said, Turk, it's something to watch, but not necessarily something that we're going to see overnight. Yield 700 to 1,200 pounds of seed per acre if you go to harvest, or you can chop it the foliage, and they can do things with it too. I say the silage, but the bottom line is it could slowly move into the market as a rotational crop with what we have. But he did stress it's got to go on the best soils, needs about 8 to 13 inches of water per year.
One of the other things that he talked about is cooking oil. When they press the seed, they can actually extract oil that could be used for cooking oil to replace olive oil, for instance, in your diet and in your cooking. So very healthy that way as well. So eventually, again, it's going to take some time to get this going. One of the things that he talked about is go slow, start out small, and then slow down.
Yeah,
so
I like that. Yeah, he did say slow down. Start out small and then slow down.
So, but very, very interesting.
He said the interest is extremely high. People are all thinking it's the next gold rush, and it's really not. But it could be 5 to 10 years out before it even becomes practical. But we just wanted to point it out that maybe someday Mershman Seeds will be selling hemp seed to you besides soybean seed. So. Turk, you attended the Farm Credit Services breakout. I did not. You had some really interesting statistics.
It was very interesting to listen to Farm Credit Services talk about the value of land and what it's done and what it's doing, and they feel that it's stable price of land is probably not going to go any lower than where it is right now. They think it's going to stay here and stable. And why is that? Because they're not making any more of it. It is the gold standard for the industry. But the interesting thing is 80% of the land sales are being bought by neighboring farmers. And you say, oh, this farm economy is kind of tough. How could that be? 80% of the land out there currently has no debt on it, whether it be the farmer that owns it or the landlord that owns it. There's no debt on it. So 80%. So that's a big number. Now, obviously, a lot of people rent land from others, and they have to borrow money for operating. And so that's the area that we really have to watch our P's and Q's on, is looking at that cash flow as far as how much can you pay for rent, how much can you pay for inputs to keep that farming operation profitable. But the land itself has very little debt on it. So that's a really good thing. They feel really comfortable about the status of the U.S. farmer and their ability to sustain the long haul. So very good information. It was also interesting to note that 47% of the land is owned by women, and of those, about 60% of those women, or 40% of those women, were over 80. So there'll be a lot of land coming up for sale here in the next few generations, or next 10 years, and so where's that land going to go? I think they said 30% of it actually transferred to a family member, and so probably won't be put on the market. 50% of it is actually sold at public auction, I believe, and so and the rest of it is other ways. So very interesting information there as well. But the good news is land prices have stabilized. They felt that interest rates were going to maybe short-term tick down just a little bit, but long-term interest rates may tip up just a little bit, but again, historically at low levels.
So one of the numbers I saw was the land sales that have occurred. That the price was 111.40 per crop suitability rating.
Yep, per CSR. Yep,
CSR 111.4.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the number that if you're buying land, that's a kind of a ballpark idea of what the value should be.
The most recent sales, that's what they're bringing.
Okay.
The average.
Well, that's just a lot of good information.
Yeah.
So, anything else today? I know we went a little bit longer than what we normally do, but we had just a lot of information that I think was really positive. And if any of you are interested in going next year to the Land Investment Expo in Des Moines at the Iowa Event Center, it's going to be held January 24th, and I think they have actually a discount now if you register before February of this year, sometime in February. I can't remember the exact date, but you can save a bunch of money on going to it. But if you want to stretch your mind and get some new ideas and see what's going on in the world of agriculture, this is one of the best events that I've ever been to.
Mm-hmm.
And Turk and I went first time last year, and definitely won't want to miss it next year. Before I close, I want to give you a little bit of weather advice, okay? Because we have this scientific system that just guarantees that we know exactly when you're going to drop your corn planter in the ground, okay? And it's something that an old timer told me about, okay? Hang on here, I get my friend. Easy now, easy. Here, I got my friend, okay? So all you have to remember is when you see the first dead skunk in the middle of the road, generally speaking, you'll be planting corn within 6 weeks. That's what I've been told. And, we've been watching this over the last many years, and it holds pretty true. And you might say, well, what does that possibly have to do with planting corn? Well, the skunks have a mating season, and the males are looking for the females. And when they're looking for the females, they're not checking for cars. So when you see your multiple dead skunks out in the middle of the road, that means the gestation period for skunks coincides pretty close to when there'll be nice weather for planting for corn. So Watch for these little guys in the middle of the road. 6 to 8 weeks later, you'll be planting corn.
That's a wrap.